बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। सबको अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मेरा नाम जहां ज़ेब है और मैं आप सब लोगों को यहाँ पे यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ इंजीनियरिंग एंड टेक्नोलॉजी एल्यूमनी ऑफ कनाडा की तरफ से खुशामदीद कहता हूँ इस सेमिनार में। आई से यू वेलकम ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ द यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ इंजीनियरिंग टेक्नोलॉजी एल्यूमनी ऑफ कनाडा and the Professional Development Committee of UETAC. And today this meeting will be coordinated and will be presented by Kamal Mirza Saab. So after this, I will hand over to Kamal Mirza Saab to introduce our today guest speaker, and run the rest of the show. Over to Kamal Saab.
जी, थैंक यू जावेद साहब, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। आज हमारा टॉपिक है करियर इन सप्लाई चेन मैनेजमेंट और गेस्ट स्पीकर फैसल अमीन। I would like to talk about our initiative from UETAC, which is University of Engineering and Technology alumni of Canada. This is professional development body of this organization, और इस body के under हमने बहुत सारे seminars किए हैं जावेद साहब की leadership में. Just to give you a little rundown on what we have done so far. So ये हमारे past the first one was to get a PEng. उसके बाद फिर बहुत सारे हमने seminars conduct किए environment और health and safety में, transportation में. मैंने ये career in project controls पे seminar किया, and then construction management and so on and so forth. तो आज फैसल हमें बताएंगे कि how we can move into the career of supply chain management, और उसके लिए he will let us know कि उसमें basically क्या requirement है, broader industry की क्या specifications हैं और कौन सी certifications हैं जिसको हम लेके जा सकते हैं, और सबसे important चीज़ ये कि why engineers can get into that and how. तो वो बातें होंगी. आप लोग हमें कांटेक्ट कर सकते हैं uet.alumni.ca@gmail.com पे अगर आप भी इस किस्म की इनिशिएटिव में पार्टिसिपेट करना चाहते हैं. तो यू आर वेरी वेलकम. फैसल जो हैं इन्होंने सिविल इंजीनियरिंग की है यूईटी लाहौर से 95 सेशन से. ही इज माय क्लास फेलो एंड वन ऑफ माय बेस्ट फ्रेंड. आई नो हिम फॉर द लास्ट 27 सालों से वाकफियत है. एंड इसके बाद ये स्ट्रक्चरल इंजीनियर यूईटी ग्रेजुएट फ्रॉम लम, दी सप्लाई चेन मैनेजमेंट प्रोफेशनल विद अ टोटल ऑफ 19 years एक्सपीरियंस. और इन्होंने डिलीवर किया कुवैत में, इन्होंने काम किया और कनाडा में और पाकिस्तान में. और इनके की प्रैक्टिस एरिया था प्रोक्योरमेंट, टेक्नोलॉजी, सोर्सिंग, नेगोशिएशन, डिमांड एंड सप्लाई प्लानिंग एंड ऑपरेशनल एक्सीलेंस. ये इन चीज़ों के बारे में डिटेल में हमें बताएंगे कि सोर्सिंग क्या है और डिमांड, सप्लाई प्लानिंग और ऑपरेशनल एक्सीलेंस क्या चीज़ें. सो वी विल लर्न फ्रॉम हिम टुडे. तो थैंक यू वेरी मच. सो आई विल नाउ रिक्वेस्ट फैसल to proceed, and I'll make him co-host at the same time.
Okay, I'm the co-host now. Thank you, Kamal Saab. Okay, thank you, Kamal Saab. Thank you, Janzi Saab. It's a great initiative. I believe for the community and the alumni of UET. I hope this is helpful. So I'm going to share my screen. So today's topic is careers in supply chain management. Kamal Saab has already introduced me. I am a civil engineer basically, and then I moved into supply chain management. So I'll try to, throughout this presentation, I'll try to connect how engineering and supply chain management are connected or can be connected. The agenda for today's presentation, we'll look at some of the definitions. Then we'll talk about what are the various functional streams within the supply chain management. and what are the key skills that are needed in order to excel in supply chain management. And finally, trainings and certifications and routes through which you can move from an engineering profession into supply chain management and excel in that field. And at the end, we'll have a question and answer session. So let's get into it. Definitions, I put definitions in here so that we have a basic understanding of what is supply chain and what is supply chain management, and then we start discussing it in more detail. So supply chain basically is all the activities. I'm just reading from the slide. It's all the activities, people, organizations, information, and resources required to move a product from inception to the customer. So it's a vast scope. If all the people, all the activities, all the organizations are included in an information sharing and resources to move a product from inception to the customer, you can imagine that it includes a lot of organizations, a lot of people. So scope is pretty broad. And supply chain management is the process of integrating the supply and demand management, not only within the organization, but also across all the various members and channels in the supply chain. So they work together most efficiently and effectively. So इसका मतलब क्या है simple terms में? Supply management is the producers in the supply chain. How are we managing those aspects of this puzzle? And on the other hand, demand management is customer focused. How are we learning about customers' requirements and how we are reacting to those? What are the supply constraints, and what is the information coming from demand? So how do we use both sets of information, both sets of constraints, and make it an efficient and effective process? So, and I believe we'll talk at the end perhaps about what is happening in today's world, why there's such a big issue with supply chain. Okay, I know this is a small font, so shayad I think most of the people cannot see this, but you really don't need to read what is written here. I wanted to give an idea about an end-to-end supply chain. Basically, kya cheezein involved hain. The first step is design. So this is Toyota's supply chain, a very simple supply chain map. But you can see it starts with design and it ends with service. So even after delivery of the product, which is a car, service is also included in the supply chain. And the focus here is, you see, mining. It starts from mining. So if you're talking about one of the products or one of the materials used for automobiles is steel. Steel, iron ore is a basic raw material, coke. So all of those become part of the supply chain of a car. So Toyota is very much concerned about what is happening in the world of steel, what is happening in the world of chips, which are short these days, which affect the supply chain of Toyota and other automobiles companies. So it includes everything. It includes when these raw materials are moved from one country to another, that's part of supply chain, whether it is moving by a sea shipment or by air shipment. It's an inland transport by a truck or rail. Everything is included. What's happening in the manufacturing facilities, that's also part of the supply chain. And again, this is a very simple depiction of a very complex supply chain. Toyota's supply chain is very complex, but it gives some idea of what is included in the supply chain. Okay, so the functional streams in supply chain management. Basically, there are four distinct areas in supply chain management. I'll start with sourcing. Sourcing is procurement of goods and services, and sourcing includes your analysis of data, and then based on that, you figure out what are the opportunities analysis could be on a design phase where engineers are coming up with a new product or a refinement of a product which requires new vendors, new materials. So that's where the sourcing team gets involved. They start looking at what are the opportunities in the market. So market research is involved. Then there is an RFP process. If the goods or services that are to be procured are of a reasonable or a significant amount, then you have this RFP process. Then there is a detailed negotiation process, which is very close to my heart. I've been working the last 12, 13 years in procurement. So negotiation is a very key area. You need to have that skill in order to negotiate those large contracts. And then finally, you implement a contract, and supplier management is the last process where you are continuously involved in maintaining the relationship with the suppliers. On the manufacturing, so the goods, the raw materials that you have procured are to be manufactured into finished goods or semi-finished goods. Semi-finished goods, because if you're talking about supply chain, then maybe you are not directly selling to the end customer. So I work in steel industry, so we produce hot rolled coils, galvanized coils, and many other forms of coated steel coils. But then those are used by automotive industry and construction industry. And there are companies which add more value to those products. So a finished product from our company is a raw material for another company. But at the end of the day, you're looking at from a supply chain
perspective. Okay, so from there we move on to logistics, which is basically delivery of products, warehousing, and transportation. So your sea shipments, your rail shipments, your truck shipments, your custom clearance, distribution centers, everything is included in logistics. And finally, I'll come back to planning. So planning is the ability to control everything: sourcing, manufacturing, and logistics. It could be in one area. Just planning could only be for sourcing, planning could only be for manufacturing or for logistics, or it could encompass everything from sourcing to logistics. And we'll look at it in more detail. But these are the four areas where three are operational areas. One is the planning area, and engineers can enter in any of these four fields. So what are the key skills that are sought by organizations? So there are soft skills and hard skills. And analytical abilities or abilities to find solutions, which in my opinion, engineers are very good at this. Engineers are trained to find solutions, come up with solutions, create new solutions. So it is a very important skill to have when you are entering into a field like supply chain management. That serves you well. Leadership skills are always important, I believe, in any field, and supply chain management is no exception. You need to take ownership. You need to work with a team, lead the team. Even if you are not in a leadership position, you need to exhibit your leadership skills while working on problems. So that comes in as well. Stakeholder management, because the team that you're working is huge. It involves your suppliers, people in the company. So you have engineers working with you, you have finance people working with you, you have legal teams working with you, and then you have customers. So you need to work with a huge team, and you should know how to work with people, how to manage stakeholders, Without that, it becomes difficult to operate in this area. Hard skills, knowledge of industry. Again, engineers have an edge here. If you are talking about an automotive industry, and you are a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer or various other engineering fields, you know that aspect. So it becomes that much easier for you to enter into an industry on the back of your industry knowledge or the functional knowledge as well. So if you go into a specific area of an industry and you know that that area very well, you have worked for 5 or 10 years in that area, so it's easier for you to learn more about the functional aspects. On the other side, if you are already in supply chain management and you have a knowledge in sourcing or in logistics or in manufacturing, then you can take that experience and that knowledge to another industry. So you can use your functional knowledge and leverage it to work in another industry, or you can use your industry knowledge and leverage it into a different function, which can be supply chain. Technology, again, in my opinion, engineers are very good at learning new technologies. And today we have ERP systems, we have applications which are created for solutions for sourcing, for manufacturing, and for logistics. So you need to be well versed with those technologies to have an advantage. And I'll touch upon that later in the presentation. So moving on. So what are the different careers in these 4 streams that we have just talked about? Planning. As I said earlier, planning is about all the 3 other operational fields: sourcing, your manufacturing, and logistics. So supply planning is basically what you're going to produce or what you're going to source. Demand planning is to learn about customers' needs and how are those going to translate into your requirements. People who have worked in manufacturing know that customer demand changes, and then you have to react to that demand. So demand planning is about that. Production planning is how to effectively manage your production resources, how to plan for those resources. And sales and operations planning is basically it covers supply planning and demand planning and production planning all at an overall level. You look at it as a one activity. So a team is engaged in managing these things. And again, here, if you have an engineering background, you do have an edge here, because you either you have experience in production planning or supply planning. You can understand the product, you can understand the constraints, that why this particular product, if there are n number of SKUs, how much time is required for each SKU. So you're able to use your functional knowledge of the product, the technical knowledge of the industry to your advantage here. Logistics planning is for your warehousing, for your transportation. So it can be a vast subject, but I'm not going to talk too much about it, because out of all of these 4 areas, logistics, I believe, is a more specialized area. You need to learn about it, and then you can enter into it, and but it's a very rewarding area as well. Now, the last 3 ones are very important, and these are again some of the areas which can create an entry position for engineers. Data analysis and information management. A lot of engineering is about analysis, about solving mathematical problems, and also engineers are good at quantitative skills. I would say that they would be very good at data analysis as well. This is an area where you can focus and learn a little bit about it, and then you can enter into supply chain management through this route. Operational excellence is improvement of your operation, basically lean, which is reduction of waste, and Six Sigma, which is improvement of quality. So that's another area, a very vast area. Engineers, a lot of engineers are involved in this thing, in this field. I have worked in an operational excellence role, and the team that I have worked with was all engineers. And leadership roles in supply chain management. So finally, if you are entering into a leadership role in supply chain management, you will be looking at an overall supply chain. You'll need to understand what is supply chain. You'll have to take a 30,000 feet view of things. You will not go and look into each functional area. You will not be performing those activities, but you should be able to appreciate that how things are happening, what are the key strategic issues that you need to resolve, what vision you will bring for your supply chain. So these are the careers in supply chain. You can enter in one area and move around. So that's planning. And let's move on to sourcing. So sourcing is procurement. Basically, you are buying goods and services, and an entry-level role could be procurement analyst, where you are involved in one or multiple processes in procurement. As I said, data analysis, market research, RFP documentation, which involves getting the requirements and documenting those requirements, and then issuing that RFP to vendors. Then a negotiation process. Probably at a procurement analyst level, you'll not be involved in negotiations, but you may sit in those meetings and learn about how negotiations are done for high-value, multi-level contracts. And analysis is involved in that. How, if it is not a very simple thing that you're buying a widget for a price, that's a simple, in my opinion, that's a simple negotiation. But if it is a multi-level contract, there are so many different things which are involved, services and so many other conditions which have to be looked at. Then you need to have your negotiation strategy and work in order to achieve your objectives. And finally, contract signing, which will involve, you'll have to work with legal and all. So that is there. And then you move into the supplier management. So procurement analyst would be involved in one or two of these activities. Strategic sourcing manager will be responsible for the overall end-to-end activity. They will manage and deliver a project. Contract manager. So one thing that I wanted to talk about is in supply chain management, as in any other field, your role depends on multiple things. First of all, what kind of industry you are working in, what is the size of the company that you are working in, what role does your company play in the overall supply chain. So if you are in the supply chain of Toyota RAV4, then are you a manufacturer for Toyota? You are a component manufacturer for Toyota, or are you a dealership for Toyota, or are you a steel company which is producing coils for Toyota's factories? So your role, or the So the point that I'm trying to make is that irrespective of your position or a small company, you would have a smaller scope, or the scope would be larger in any role, but maybe the depth of that role would be very shallow. You'll not dig deep into things. You will just stay on the surface. In a larger company, if you are in Toyota supply chain team, then your scope will be very narrow, very limited, but you will go into depth of that. So some companies have huge contracts, so they hire contract managers. These are big companies where there are millions of dollars and billions of dollars are involved. So these are specialist positions. They look into contracts. And finally, procurement managers are looking at a team of multiple strategic sourcing managers. So this is a career progression in sourcing field. So if you, and again, just to make a connection between engineering and sourcing, most of my experience has been in sourcing. I've been involved in negotiating large contracts, and I have always relied on my engineering knowledge, whether setting up requirements, working with stakeholders. It helps me a lot to understand. I have worked so currently I'm working in steel industry. Prior to that, I have worked in an engineered building manufacturer. With an engineered building manufacturer, we designed those buildings and then fabricated the buildings and then shipped those buildings. So being a civil engineer, it was much easier for me to understand and appreciate what are the components that I am working with, talking to suppliers, talking to your stakeholder, the engineering team within the organization, talking to your sales team who is working with the customers, engineers to find new solutions. It becomes easier. You are able to read drawings. You are able to do analysis using your quantitative and analytical skills. So I see a great opportunity for engineers to enter into this field, leveraging their engineering knowledge and their skills. Manufacturing, it's again, it depends upon what your role is. If you are very much into manufacturing, you would maybe you are involved too much in manufacturing and you are not taking a supply chain perspective, where people who are looking at a higher level, they are looking at the overall supply chain, or at least 2 or 3 areas of supply chain would be production managers and production and inventory control managers. Production manager, a lot of engineers, in fact, I believe all the production managers are probably engineers. They need to take an overall view to understand supply chain, and they do. Good companies involve production managers in sales and operations planning process. They are an integral part of sales and operations planning. So production and inventory control is mainly on the planning side, but they work very closely with the production team. So I have put it here because again, you need to have that functional knowledge to understand what is the product. You need to understand what is the BOM, and engineers already understand that, so they can be a very good fit in these roles. Logistics again is a very vast field. As I said, it includes warehousing, your distribution centers, your all the transportation through sea, rail, truck, and air freight is very common these days due to supply chain challenges. So everything is included, which means that you have logistics coordinators, logistics managers, and what I have not listed here because there's a huge list. You could have your custom clearing teams. You could have your all the trucking teams. There are various roles in that. there's a lot of automation happening in distribution centers. So if you are aware of what Amazon is doing, they have distribution centers in Canada. Those are massive operations. So everything is included. It's a vast field. You can enter as an engineer, you can enter into this using one of your key skills. It will be a little bit challenging because it's a specialized field, but in my opinion, you can still enter. You can find what they need and start exploring this particular area. Now, how so far I've talked about whether engineers have an edge or they can enter into supply chain, and what are the knowledge that they already have, the skills that they already have, which they can leverage. But what we can further do to enhance our chances are certifications and trainings. So one thing I want to say about supply chain is that there is no one body which is governing the supply chain management certification. There's not one certification that you can have. Like, for example, in project management, PMP is globally recognized. So if you are in Pakistan or you in Canada, USA, you are a PMP, it means that you know about project management, and you are giving an indication to your employer that that you are qualified, you understand that field. In supply chain management, the certification bodies are too many. It depends on where you are. You are in Canada, you are in USA, you are in UK, in Pakistan. And then it depends upon which stream you are in. Are you in sourcing, or you are in manufacturing, or in logistics? So depending upon geography and on your stream, you have to select the certification that you need. So since we are in Canada, so I have tried to focus on North America, which is Canada and USA. Supply Chain Canada is the premier organization, and it has the most number of members, and their flagship certification is SCMP, Supply Chain Management Professional. And another organization, if you are looking for a career in transportation or logistics, then Canadian Institute of Traffic and Transportation, CITT, they have a certification called CCLP, which is CITT Certified Logistics Professional. So these are the two certifications that I'll discuss a little bit about these two in more detail in the next slide. But these are Canadian certifications, and if you have these, you are basically indicating to your prospective employer that you have a Canadian knowledge of supply chain, and people working in organizations who already have these certifications would understand that if you have this kind of a certification, or you are working towards getting these certifications, then you have that minimum knowledge about the subject. In USA, there are two organizations which are important. Association for Supply Chain Management, it was previously known as APIX. They have three different certifications. CPIM, which is on certificate in procurement and inventory management. It is more focused towards production planning and inventory management. So if you are trying to go into that field, that stream, I would strongly suggest CPIM. It is, even though it's an American organization, but they have chapters here in Toronto, Peel. So you can join APIX chapters in your region. And this particular certification, CPIM, is a great way to enter into supply chain management. And CSCP is Certified Supply Chain Professional, which is more towards the planning aspect. So we discussed four streams: planning, sourcing, manufacturing, and logistics. So CSCP is takes an overall view of the supply chain on the planning side. and CLTD is on the logistics. If you are trying to get into logistics, then CLTD could be a good entry point. But again, that's an American organization. I am unsure how much of that will be helpful in Canada, because in Canada, primarily CCLP, which is a certification by CITT, is, in my opinion, more preferred. Finally, Institute of Supply Management, CPSM, they have a very strong offering on the sourcing side. CPSM, of all the certifications that I've listed, if you are trying to go into a procurement field, CPSM is a highly regarded certification. And in the next slide, I'm going to compare these certifications and some prerequisites and where they are focused. So first one is SCMP. This is from Supply Chain Canada. You need 5 years experience, and all of that experience has to be in supply chain field. But if you have a degree, like all engineers have a BSc degree, so you're good to go and start working on SCMP. Once you start working on SCMP, you can mention that you are pursuing SCMP. So because SCMP would take you 3 years or sometimes even more if you don't take all the courses. It's an extensive set of modules and workshops, and then there is a final exam. So it takes time to get that. It is very high in planning and sourcing areas, but it does not go into too much detail on manufacturing and logistics. So if your stream that you want to enter into is related to manufacturing and logistics, then perhaps you should look elsewhere. CCLP requires a 3 years experience. You cannot enter if you do not have experience. So you need to start gaining experience, and probably it is more suited for fresh engineers to start working on it, or people who are looking to enter into career in logistics. So it is high, the content is high on planning and logistics, and not so much on sourcing and manufacturing as expected. CPIM is you can enter. As I said, I would strongly suggest anyone entering or planning to enter into manufacturing planning or materials management, which is on the planning side. CPIM is a certification. There are a couple of exams. It gives you a planning view, which is very, very important, and also it touches on manufacturing. So there are a lot of jobs for these kind of roles. CSCP, it is mainly on planning and manufacturing, but at a higher level compared to CPIM, and you need a degree or 3 years of experience. So you can also do CSCP after doing CPIM, or even without that. CLTD is a logistics certification, and you don't need any experience. You can do that without experience. So if you are looking into entering into logistics career, this could be a good entry point. This could be a good signal for prospective employers that you have knowledge in the area. And finally, CPSM, as I said, this is the highly regarded certification for procurement professionals, which is sourcing stream. Its content covers planning and sourcing. So that will be the certification if you are looking for entering into the the sourcing stream. So I guess I have reached the end of the presentation, and now I'll be open to the questions.
Thank you very much, Faisal.
No, I was saying that in the changing world, the supply chain management has gained its importance a lot. Has shown to the world that things can when they disrupt, they can affect all corners of the world. Topic was really nice, and I feel that people will get a lot of information from this one who are participating today. And secondly, not only that, the recorded version, when it is being played to other participants, it will give thorough and knowledge about the future perspectives of supply chain. And I want to say thank you for being our guest today. And I'll ask my friends if they have any question as Ms. Abbas to please join in. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Salman, sir, you have a question?
Assalamu alaikum. Faisal, thank you. Very good talk. I have been in procurement for maybe just as much as you are, basically technology procurement. The question I have is, can you recommend anything that I can offer to the public not as a consultant, but as a volunteer? I have templates, I have strategies, I have very good experience in e-procurement, reverse auctions online, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Salman. I believe that is a very important area. If you are in that area, you would appreciate that e-procurement and all the tools that are available today are very important. That is one way of entering into supply chain field, bringing your knowledge, to technology knowledge, your skills in analytics. That would be of great help if you could share those with public. I'm sure people who are working in procurement would appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
So Faisal sir, thank you very much. Thank you. So my question is like, what made you to join this career? And I know you have done MBA too. So from MBA and civil engineering degree, which one is the preferred option to if you want to go to in this career stream?
So, Jajesh, question, very good question. I think you don't plan on entering. When I UT joined, I wasn't planning on joining supply chain. So I wanted to be an engineer. I worked there for 5 years. I could appreciate that you can build on your engineering knowledge to do other things. So I entered into, I thought I should go back to school. MBA के लिए I went for MBA. उसके अंदर 2 साल के अंदर I was, it was a 2-year program. तो 2 साल के अंदर I was introduced to other fields like supply chain management, finance, some of the things that we don't, at least at that time when I studied, we were not taught: accounting, finance, statistics, supply chain management. So you develop a better worldview of what are other areas and how you can leverage your knowledge. So मैंने 5 साल civil engineering में design में काम किया. It was a very, very technical job, design of structures and all. But I was working on huge projects, oil and gas projects. So I could appreciate that there are other areas which can leverage this experience. So after doing MBA, I had an opportunity. Either I could go into a finance role, or I could use my engineering knowledge and start working into supply chain. So इसलिए basically मैंने select किया. I applied for positions into where I could use my engineering knowledge, where I could stay closer to engineering. So I have worked with an MEP contractor. I have worked in a engineered buildings manufacturer. जिधर मेरी civil engineering की जो knowledge थी, that was very, very much useful. I could understand कि क्या क्या कुछ हो रहा है इस industry में, क्या products हैं, design क्या है. If there are technical discussion, you are sitting in a room and there are 10 engineers, you are only supply chain person. And if you don't understand what they're talking about, probably you will be at a disadvantage. So if you're coming with an engineering background, you bring that extra to the table. So I'm unsure I have answered your question. Lekin chances of you don't plan on doing that. You just learn as you evolve, as you go through your career.
Thank you very much. And one more question. Like you have explained very well various certifications which one can have advantage of, and then to enter into this supply chain management field. I saw with your name also the degree LSSBB, which I think you have not explained in these certifications.
So basically it is lean. L stands for lean, SS Six Sigma, and BB is black belt. So it's
you joined all together.
Yeah, so it's Lean Six Sigma. So the certification that I have, the previous company I was working with, they had they provided those certifications. So there was a training, and then you had to work on projects. Once you achieve your targets on the projects, so then you got the certification. So first I did green belt, then I did a bigger project, and then with trainings and all, so I got black belt. So it's a good area for engineers. Again, a lot of analysis. You look into waste reduction through lean and quality improvement through Six Sigma. Statistics, your knowledge of क्योंकि बहुत सारे projects जो हैं वो manufacturing space में होते हैं on operational excellence. So engineers have an advantage. They understand, okay, what is the product, what are the manufacturing technologies.
Good, amazing.
Faisal, I have a question.
Sure.
So how would you see public sector and private sector differentiation as far as the supply chain is concerned? खास तौर पे public sector में जो regulations हैं और उनकी जो stringent requirements हैं, जैसे सिटी ऑफ टोरंटो की आप बात कर लें या इस किस्म के, तो आपने वो पेन भी खरीदना है तो उसके क्या इम्पैक्ट होता है, और अगर आप प्राइवेट सेक्टर में, तो इस पे कुछ थोड़ी सी अगर आप if you can shed some light.
Absolutely, thank you. It's a very good question. Basically, आपके in any stream, whether it's sourcing, manufacturing, or logistics or planning, it depends on your industry. इंडस्ट्री के अंदर पब्लिक प्राइवेट सेक्टर आ जाएगा. इवन प्राइवेट सेक्टर में डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ इंडस्ट्रीज हैं. तो अगर हम प्योरली पब्लिक और प्राइवेट सेक्टर की बात करें तो पब्लिक सेक्टर में रेगुलेशंस, वी ऑल नो देयर रेगुलेशंस. यू नीड दैट knowledge. You need to know how to work with stakeholders. So you will, it's for an engineer, if you want to enter into public sector, maybe you should study that area. There could be ways to learn more about what are the rules, how an RFP runs in a public sector for procurement. And there are a lot of jobs. Public sector is one of the largest employers. So you should focus on that. You should not leave that space. Yeah, there are huge differences. In a private sector, they would look for different things. You have more decision-making authority. So they would look for different skills. They would look for different knowledge. And again, industry, company, what kind of company you are working in supply chain. If you are working in a main partner in supply chain, main partner, as I gave the example of Toyota supply chain or car supply chain, and main partner is Toyota, but there are several other companies, component manufacturers, there are steel manufacturers, they're all part of the same supply chain. So your role will be defined by what kind of partner you are working with in the supply chain. How big is that partner? Where is it located? So yeah, it's a good thing. You need to appreciate these differences. So whenever you're trying to enter into an industry, know what are the specifics to that particular industry.
Thank you, Faisal. Any other questions?
I have one for Faisal Bhai. This is Munir. I'm electrical engineer actually. So, but anyway, my question is related to crisis management in the supply chain. Nowadays, we all know there is a big issue in the supply chain, right? For example, in my work environment, I work with the two manufacturers, and I mean, my products every day really need a lot of different components. And what do you suggest as a crisis management tool nowadays, especially when I need, for example, I mean, I need bill of material for the 10 systems in next month and like 100 systems for the next 3 months. What is the best crisis management strategy in today's times?
So, Munir, a very good question. I wish I have good news. The only news I have is that crisis management companies, just ये शुरू हुआ supply chain challenges. So the companies who had good supply chain management practices, who had good alliances with their supply chain partners, have relatively performed better. No doubt, every company now, in the company that I work, we also facing similar kind of challenges. Things that we could get in one day or let's say in 1 week, not taking months to deliver, right? So crisis management, one thing that is important is very first slide पे हमने बात की थी कि how do you work together? A crisis aa gaya hai, if there is a problem, you need to still bring all the partners in the supply chain together to find a solution. Information sharing has to increase. We all love to work in our silos, but in today's world, you cannot do that. You need to bring it's called integrated planning, right? Which goes beyond your company, not only function. Sometimes we're planning at a functional level. Next step is to plan at a company level, and finally, cutting edge theme is that you have to work across. You need to bring in your downstream partners, upstream partners, and discuss के आपके जो components हैं, how many of those components are needed. Can there be substitute? कि जो पहले हम काम कर रहे थे, we never thought about those things. But in today's world, you need to bring everyone in and find a solution to problems. So I would suggest this to enhance more communication with supply chain partners can resolve some of the issues.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that's that's exactly what I'm doing, and it's working well.
Thank you, Manita. Any other question?
I think we can request Dr. for the concluding remarks.
Faisal Amin Sahab, I would like to thank you from the perspective of a technical individual. You made me listen to you very carefully, although I have no idea about that field. So I must give it to you that you have very good communication skills. And at the same time, you responded to some of the questions in a very, very professional manner. So I really want to thank you. And I, after listening to you, have a little better understanding of the crisis we are going through right now during the days of COVID. I think the crisis in the supply side is now almost at the same level as the crisis in the medical field. And various governments are still trying to understand which one of these they can tolerate better given the resources of the country. Sometimes they open it so that people can get the supplies. The other time they shut it down so that the people going into the hospital can be treated. I think this is a tremendous topic that you presented to us, and I wish there were more people to listen to you. But since this is being recorded, so I'm sure a lot of people will listen to this also. This particular field promotes transparency in the society, because you have to have everything logically organized. And when you have things logically organized, that transparency shows up. There were some requests from Pakistan that we needed to record this. And Salim Chaudhary Saab agreed that it will be recorded and made available to them. I only wish that people there would listen to you, because you gave a nice overall view of the field. And then they would approach you to try to resolve some of the issues there that are chronic in nature. At least during my lifetime, there was always some crisis in the supply management in that country, and now it is worse. So I think you can be a very valuable individual for those people in Pakistan who want to listen to you. And we'll make sure that at least we find some people who would listen to you. And I want to thank everybody, particularly Jahan Zeb, for going at it with one mind that we need to make sure that we do these things and we benefit the society. So thank you very much. I learned a lot from today's thing.
Thank you, Jamil sir. I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yusuf. Thank you for these compliments. And we are determined to make it happen. And I think we are lined up for next 2-3 months at least. And for recorded purpose, yes, it is being recorded.
This is Malik in Atlanta.
Malik Saab, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Kaise hain aap? How are you?
मैं तो ठीक हूँ, आपकी तबीयत ठीक है?
I'm fine. I just wanted to recognize and thank you all very much for inviting the friends from the Unity Endowment Group. And I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. It's a great effort. And hopefully we can continue every month. This is what was a great presentation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So we conclude with this. And if there is no hand show this time, Salim साहब आपकी इजाजत से फिर इस वक्त हम करें इस सेशन को conclude.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Saab has already concluded this thing. I want to say special thanks to Faisal Amin Saab for the valuable time.
Sure.
Inshallah, down the road, we will keep this tradition up in the pandemic days to keep connecting and share whatever good knowledge can be shared by our colleagues, our friends, our UTians to the community here in Canada or across the globe. I want to say thank you to all the participants and special thanks to Dr. Sheikh and Faisal, our guest of speaker there today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.